In number 15, we are finding the inverse of this function. If you just watched the video for number 14, was also asking to find the inverse. We talked about the visual of the function machine and going forwards, and the inverse is going backwards through the machine. And that way of thinking is very nice to use for more simpler functions like what we have in number 14. Number 15 is quite a bit more complicated, mostly because we have a fraction here involved. There's an x in the numerator and in the denominator. So we're not going to talk about the function machine idea, although that is a great way to get kind of a basic understanding of what happens with inverse. For this problem, we're going to use a more formal method. So the first step, we will replace f of x with y. And actually, we talked about this method, the more formal method, toward the end of the video on number 14. Again, if you just watched that, it should sound familiar. So replace f of x with y. Then our next step, we are going to switch x and y. So anywhere there's a y, we're going to rewrite it with an x. Anywhere there's an x, which this happens in two places, we're going to replace it with a y. So that's going to look like this. Okay, now our next step, and this is where it gets more complicated, this is where we want to solve for y. First, we're going to get rid of this fraction by multiplying both sides by the quantity in the denominator. In this case, that would be 3 minus 5y. So looking over at the right-hand side, this is really 3 minus 5y over 1. So we have a common factor on the top, same as what's on the bottom, so those will cancel, leaving us with negative 4 plus 2y on the right side. Now on the left side, we can distribute the x since it is multiplied on the outside of this quantity that's in parentheses. So we end up with 3x minus 5xy, or you could write yx. The order doesn't matter. Now remember, our goal here, we're solving for y, and the variable y shows up in two places. We're going to get these terms together on the same side. So I'm just going to move the 5xy over to the right side to get those together. At the same time, I'm going to move this negative 4, I'm going to move that over to the other side. So I'll do that by adding 4 to both sides. So now what we're left with on the left side is 3x plus 4. And then on the right side, we're left with 2y plus 5xy. I'm going to highlight those y's again just to really help us see that that's what we're solving for. The two terms that involve y, now they are together on the same side. So since they both involve a y is a common factor between the two, and we can actually factor it out. So that's going to turn our two y's into just one single y, which is eventually what we want. So we have the y in front. In our parentheses, we're left with 2 plus 5x. I'm going to highlight that y again because we want to get that by itself. Now y is being multiplied by this, 2 plus 5x, and so to get y by itself, we'll just divide both sides by 2 plus 5x. So now that's a common factor over here from the top and bottom. That will cancel. And over here we have the formula for the inverse. And our final step would be replacing y with that inverse notation. Again, we talked about this notation back in number 14. It looks like f of x, but it has a little negative 1 up there. The negative 1 looks like an exponent, but it's not. It's just notation for inverse. And so this right here would be our final answer.